I'll be working. Okay, Streamayo is catching it. SceneSat should also be catching it.
That's what you get when you try to have 45 simultaneous streams on an extremely...
It can be annoying to set up, I give you that. Go live. It seems everything is working now though. So good. We are in Facepalm, we are on Twitch, and we are on SceneSat. I think we are on SceneSat. We are
on SceneSat.
Okay. Awesome! So we're ready to start the show. We have 3 minutes of pre-show left. So we can talk about the great stuff that is this little music disc. Amiga music disc in 2018 by the guys from Abyss. That did a great job. It's a really cool music disc. Getting a lot of upvotes. Let's see if we have people on the chat showing up. Should probably spam that we are starting the show sometime soon.
I certainly told people.
I did too.
Thank you very much for that.
In the Genesis project pages on Facebook, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna post it on the site that never should be named, which is Puet, for those who don't know. There are a lot of people who have hatred for Puet with a lot of good reasons. And I used to be administrator of Puet for a few years, so I still give it the benefit of doubt. But yeah.
People are also ridiculous.
I agree.
I mean, here's my problem. My problem is that I spend a lot of time in a lot of scenes, like Aslan the Lion from Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, it's a book by C.S. Lewis about a fantasy land, and there's this mystical lion who shows up, and what he keeps mentioning is how the events in the stories are like on his rounds. Like he's like, I'm in like 20 other things, but I'm checking in on you folks. And here's what's going on. So like for the scene, I don't live and breathe the scene 24/7. I live and breathe many different scenes 24/7. And
yeah, I have similar issue. I'm also involved in several different scenes, and people are stupid in all of them, not just on.
And so yeah, so you see trends that are interesting, and where people will say, well, this, that, including the non-unique aspect that people will say our scene is unique. Like every scene will go, we're unique. The reason that we have to be assholes in this particular way is because of the unique attributes of our scene. I'll be like, yeah, okay. And so when I see Puet provides the same functionality that the FidoNet newsletter provided, that a phone book provides.
I remember FidoNet discussions were always full of flame wars as well. I wasn't part of FidoNet, but I heard tales.
And so in all these cases, like, you need that kind of house organ that has at least some core, portrayal of what's going on. Like, here are the 20 new things that got added in a chronological way, and in a relatively easy way to say, and what else has this group done, or what are the previous parties? And it's not perfect. And the comments, I have yet to see comment functionality in any artistic community that wasn't a shit show at this point. But
sometimes it can be constructive. The problem is most times it's more destructive than constructive. Oh, there's someone on the chat that says that they're still running a FidoNet node. That's awesome. That's awesome, Moop. Good work.
So, like, for me, it's wonderful because at least I have some core knowledge when I turn back to say, oh, what parties are happening? Were there any advancements that got so much attention people are really enjoying them? The top of the month stuff, where you just say, wow, something just came out and it got everyone's attention because it was so incredibly unique. Like, I'm thinking of like LFT's original board hackery, or when Falbrausch did one or two real forward jumping things. Like, it enabled me to not miss those. whereas everyone goes, "Oh, we're done here." Like that happened 2 months ago. Why do you even still talk about it? And so Pouet plays a very important part to me. But
a lot of Demosceners hate Pouet because whenever they release something, there's always someone on Pouet that is a hater that's gonna talk trash about your stuff regardless of what you do.
That's not Pouet. That's that human beings are awful.
It's the same shit going on at CSDB or the C64 scene.
Yeah, why wouldn't? Like, aren't you like? If you've ever done anything creative, and you've done it a number of times, there's always somebody who walks up after you're done with their little drink, and they say something where you're like, "Well, it would be bad manners for me to punch your shit out, but I want to. I want to." You know, just someone comes up and just is like, "You know, for a girl, this is pretty good," or something.
That's horrible.
You know, they just come out with some horse shit,
and they say that honestly, like they feel like that's a good thing, like they're giving a compliment to a person saying something like that.
So with the Pouet comments, you'll get somebody in there who's like, "Oh, this reminds me of this, this, and this," and it's like, okay, that's
good for you.
And a lot of it just comes down to, I find a little bit of is the code. Everybody gets an equal say, so as a result, there's no moderation up and down. And part of it is just, it's a very limited, it's meant to be a very limited thing, right? Thumbs up, thumbs down, no opinion. And that leads to, like, what do you call it? A lot of
boxing,
vitriol in both directions, and a little band of neutrality. And so it just, I get it, but I'm very pleased that Pouet exists, and I think it's been an invaluable way as a historian what happened, because as you know, the demo scene is like 99% telling people what the demo scene is.
There are a lot of things still missing from Pouet, though. It's not a complete database yet. And Demoscene tries to complement it more in that regard
like
as well.
Any house organ directory, it's going to have those gaps. It's going to have those holes. That's it.
Because the discussion, the context behind what happened when you released, what happened socially when you released that release is also important to contextualize years later how that was received. So seeing that discussion going on and the flame wars and stuff, it helps contextualize things a bit better, I think.
So for me, it's anyway, it's invaluable. I would never pretend it's perfect, but I'm waiting for the perfect. It's the same thing with the Internet Archive. It's not perfect, but show me the other one.
Yeah.
And they'll do better.
Yeah, that's the thing.
In everything. I mean, that's what I mean. So as I talk, I'll just be like, and this is what it's like everywhere, because it is. It's that way in ham radio. It's that way in trucking. It's that way in shipping containers. It's everywhere. These guys suck. They're the only ones who do this. This should happen. It's not happening. We got to get through the day. I still have so much joy for this scene when I visit it, though. So for me, it's still. I don't regret it, resent it, or hate it. Every time I see it, it's lovely, and I still see eyes light up when I show them the best of the best, whoever they are. So that's the thing. That's where I come from.
Okay, anyways, it's already past 7, so I guess we should officially start the show. So welcome everyone to Mystery Demoscene Theater 9000. This is season 4 of episode number 1. We are in 2019. Somehow we are already in 2019. Damn, I'm getting old. I have with me 3 new guests on the show. They've never been here, either of them. I have Raistlin and Hedning of a Genesis Project, and I have Jason Scott of the Archive. I guess it's of text files and archive.org.
Textfiles.com, archive.org, and for the people in the scene, co-founder of Block Party USA.
Yep. So we're starting off the show today with some with this music disc that you've just been seeing for the last few minutes. It's a Preschool number 2 by Abyss. It's a release that contains shit tons of tracks, all made with this pre-tracker, I think it's called, format that they just recently released. It's quite cool. Been getting a lot of thumbs up, so I recommend you guys checking out. I wanted to play one more demo before we got into C64 stuff, and it's this one by Insane. It's called Flashbacks, and I think it won something. I think it won Compusphere. I'm not sure if it's if I'm correct or not, But this got a lot of positive feedback, and I wanted to check what that was about. I don't know, do you guys follow the Amiga scene? Raistlin, Hedning, or Jason?
Tiny bit. Not much.
Tiny bit, yeah.
All the scenes, but I mean, I'm an outsider too. So I mean, I follow everything. Like, it doesn't matter to me what platform something is on. I don't recognize every name. There are names that are classics to me, but I also know some of these guys have been doing it for 20 years and are probably not even the same guys.
Yeah, so, you came more from the Apple II things, right, Jason? Why is the Apple II so famous in the US?
My first computer was given to me, like handed to me, by Andy Rubin, the creator of Android, when we were friends.
Yeah, I heard that show on your podcast.
Yeah, and so he gave me the Amiga. And with the Amiga, he had downloaded some demo discs, including, like 1988 era demos. And I thought they were spectacular. And I didn't understand what was happening, right? Like how this was being accomplished. And so I played with those. The Apple II had no demo scene until maybe the 2000s. And then from there, I kept track of Amiga demo. I had an Amiga all through my 1990s. So I was always downloading Amiga stuff. That was like my primary demo scene machine. Okay. Later, the PC folks, I got a little involved with them once the graphics cards started to make life better. But for me, it's first Amiga. I didn't even pay attention to the Commodore 64 scene until the 2000s.
I was checking the info on this demo. It's actually for Amiga OCS, not AGA, which, well, it shows on the colors. It's quite good. I can see why it's been getting quite some good comments. It's actually got second place at CompuSphere in, I think it's in Sweden, isn't it? Yep. Hedning, you're from Sweden, right?
Yes.
Do you know of CompuSphere at all, or you just follow the Commodore 64 stuff?
In Sweden, both the C64 scene and the Amiga scene is often combined, like in Datastorm in Gothenburg. It was more C64 back in the 2010, and then Amiga took over more of the demo competitions. And last year there were almost only Amiga releases. But CompuSphere is in the same city, so I know about it and I know the guys organizing it. Did
you went there this year or not really?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I focus on the C64.
Okay.
I shouldn't say this, but after the C64, I went to the Atari scene.
What?
Amiga guys. Yeah, I did.
And you got ostracized from...
The Amiga guys, they are not always happy about that information, but I usually say that I followed Jack Tramiel to the Atari instead of following Commodore path. But I'm back in the C64.
You were away for quite a few years. Is this correct? I heard that story, but I'm not sure if it's correct or not.
That would be Raistlin, actually.
Yeah. It's Raistlin that was away. So I guess we can talk about that. We are watching the #1 demo of CompuSphere while Raistlin talks. I just want to contextualize for people listening. So Raistlin, tell me why. First, when did you get into the demo scene? And two, how did you end up coming back so many years later?
Yeah, sure. So I got into demos in about 1988. I was a very early owner of the Commodore 64, so I started swapping with some crackers back in the day, so intros, really liked them. Yep, just started trying to copy what people were doing and went from there. I actually, so I released quite a lot of demos. I was doing demos, it would take like 2 or 3 days and I'd release one. I was doing far too many. Far too many back in the day.
I wish nowadays you could do a demo in 2 days.
Yeah. I mean, they're all garbage, really. Or I thought so at the time.
The scroller demos.
Yeah. So I quit the scene in 91, went off to university, and I've not been back until last year.
Really?
So I kept in touch with the scene. I mean, I watched all of the demos, what people were making. And in a way, that put me off for a long time. Seeing what Boo's Design and Sensor were doing. I just thought, well, it's way beyond what I used to make. You know, I couldn't possibly compete.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, last year I thought, you know, just give it a go, see what happens, and yeah, it's actually a lot easier nowadays with modern tools to create this stuff. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
For old machines, I guess you have a lot more support. Well, it's faster to run stuff. You can run things on the PC or pre-calc stuff on the PC and then pass it to Commodore in your case, and how's it called? Cross-platform.
Cross-platform, cross-assembling, and yeah. I mean, as well, the emulators really help because they have some pretty incredible features. You know, you can
see the old memory and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you can also see exactly where on the screen the raster bar, the raster scan is. So you can see exactly where to open the borders, where to put your sprites, and it helps so much.
Okay, very cool. And so, how did were that the other guys from Genesis Project that convinced you to be active again, or you just felt the need to do something?
So I was talking to Hedning, and I just said to him, I mean, I was looking at an old demo effect that I'd made on my last demo back in 1991, and I said, you know, I'm gonna try and remake that, see if I can make it any better. And once I'd done that, I got hooked. I was, you know, I just
That's how they get you.
Yeah. And I mean, I
remember you asked me, what kind of loader should we use? And I was like, well, LFT's loader. I've heard he's a friend of mine. He lives in the same city as I do. So I just throw that on you, and off you went.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we started in April, and we released the demo in July. So it was a really quick production. Quite a lot of work, but yeah, we got it out for Gub Data, which is the party that Hedning arranges in Sweden. Because we looked at other competitions and we thought, well, there's no point going to X because, you know, we can't possibly compete there, not in that time frame. But then after doing that demo, I mean,
but X is only like every 2 years, so I mean, you have time to prepare stuff, supposedly.
Yeah. And I mean, I know most groups will spend like 2 years making a demo. We had a very short time frame.
Yeah,
but it was fun.
But we already talked a little bit about X last episode when I had Frankie and Truck on, and we talk about how important X is for the C64. It's really like a mecca of where the C64 demo scene goes. You're planning everything to win X or to participate in X, because winning is always strange, weird. The results are, well, the competition is very long, so I guess that brings up some inconsistencies in voting as well. But I don't know. I'm not a C64 senior, so for me it's harder to evaluate C64 demos.
Yeah,
like special technical details and stuff like that. So what I wanted to say is that there are a lot of smaller demo parties happening with Commodore 64 friendly competitions, but it seems like everyone's just aiming for X. It's always X.
Yeah. It's like every second year there are the amount of releases slow down, because everyone is holding back until X. But the smaller parties are also, of course, important. Gub Data started in 2009 in a former state. Small meetings growing until like 4 or 5 years ago when I went official with it. I'm actually at the place right now, which is my workplace, where we have the party.
So the party is there?
Yeah, I have it in the at my workplace. It's a school, so it's for free. Also, they don't have to pay any entrance at all. So just for fun.
So very cool.
And so it's an invite-only party. It's for my local friends, and then it grew and grew, and we're about 70, 80 persons every year.
So you're part of the organizing?
Yeah, I'm the single organizer.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. So yeah, I was asking you about these parties in Sweden. So you have first-hand experiences of all the parties. It always feels like Sweden is a very small, local-based scene. Like it doesn't have these huge parties. It used to have like DreamHack and stuff like that, but nowadays it's just like very like 20 people, 100 people parties. And
I think Datastorm is the biggest. I don't know how many they have there, but about 150, 200, something like that.
Edison's also pretty big, isn't it? Or is trying to grow?
Yeah, but it's about 100. I think it's the same for the last years, about 100 maybe.
Okay, it's very cool. But it's very cool that it seemed, at least for the PC scene, it seemed that like the Swedish scene had just died off. But it when you come to know the C64 and the Amiga scene, it seems that's still quite strong in Sweden. That never quite died out.
And a lot of people went from the PC scene back to the Amiga and the C64 scene as well.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people, like Pandaloon was like a very active PC coder, and he just retired from the PC scene somehow and just started making stuff for C64.
Exactly.
Which was awesome. Which one of you wants to tell me about the stuff that we're watching right now? Delirious 11.
Yeah. Raistlin. This is me in sleep, you know. Slept for 27 years and then woke up to make the demo.
Just in time. With a quote from Orson Welles.
And then almost all graphics are from Razorback. He's mostly known as an Amiga and PC graphician, but he went all C64 2 years ago. And he's like perfecting it like nobody else. It's really great graphics, I think.
Why did he choose to switch and go so intensely?
I think it was because of the C64 scene was more, I don't know, massive. It's a lot bigger than the Amiga scene in Sweden, at least.
Okay.
More compos, more, and of course the challenge.
It feels like, at least on the PC scene, it seems like it's more about modeling instead of like just doing art itself, like graphical art. So I think a lot of those artists that were active back in the 90s, they miss like the pixel art aspect of the thing. And they're more interested to go back to old school platforms that have those limits when they're doing demos that are supposedly, you know, acts of having fun.
Yeah.
So
this is Red Crab, who made this picture.
Pretty cool. So the routines were all pretty much new stuff or revamped stuff. You were talking a little bit about that before, Raistlin.
So this particular effect is the one that I used in Delirious 10. And at the time, when I was 16 years old and coding this, I thought, you know, nobody's ever going to be able to beat this effect. It's, you know, it's using the whole CPU, it's using all the memory. And so I came back and I beat it myself. And we actually beat it in the next demo, and, you know, yeah, it's funny.
Do you call it Giga Screen, or did I hallucinate that name? Like when it's bigger than the screen? No, you don't give it a name. Okay, I hallucinated. I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm trying to figure out. It looks cool. I'm just not sure what's supposed to. If it's more like a donut or an eye.
It's an eye.
It's supposed to be an eye.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why we're hallucinating, I guess.
Why are your demos always called Delirious? Is it just something that sticked?
That was just my series, and yeah, it just stuck.
Okay. Tell me a little bit more about Genesis project. Like, how many members? When was it founded?
It was founded in 1985 or 86 in Germany by TNT, or more known as Antichrist.
Great nickname.
Antichrist. He renamed himself after a while there.
I wonder why.
And yeah, it grew to become one of C64 scene's biggest cracking crews in the late 80s and early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And in the early 90s, there were more and more. Oh, I think Raistlin, did you join in '89?
Yes.
Yeah, more and more demos were coming out then. There was some British demo sceners in Genesis project that made a lot of demos there, and we had some Germans too. And then in '95, somewhere it died out. And then we rebooted Genesis in 2009 when Datastorm was supposed to be built up.
Mm-hmm.
And we rebuilt the group, contacted Antichrist, and he was all okay with it. And I joined the same year. And
oh yeah, so you're a new schooler in Genesis project.
Yeah, I'm a new guy in Genesis.
So is it mostly Swedish based now, or is it still international?
Nowadays it's Scandinavian mostly, but we have, you know, Britain, the US, and Germany, yeah, all over the place.
I know that Hardy became a member of Genesis project, and he was releasing stuff on PC because he was telling me that it was like he was telling me that it's an old dream of his to be in Genesis projects, so he had to apply to be in the group.
And of course we let him in. I want to build up a little PC division as well, slowly. But we're focused. It's like 95% C64, and then we have tried some Amiga intros and some Atari stuff, and also PC. And Widdy, of course, he's doing stuff on Wii and Game Boy Advanced and stuff like that. We also made some. We have Shadow, a coder. Shadow is doing demos on all different platforms. He can code any machine that.
If you follow Shadow's demography, you can see that like it's almost every demo he does, it's a different platform. He just enjoys learning platforms somehow.
Yeah.
How long would an art like this take, by the way?
This is, I think Razorback worked for, what can it be? 1.5 months, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It shows.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, he's very fond of skulls too, so you will see more of them later here.
So this was apparently the first time that a diagonal bitmap scroller had been done on the 64, because it's using it's full screen. People have used hardware effects to do simpler versions before, but with that you lose quite a lot of the screen. This one's the full screen size.
Right.
And it's 50 frames a second as well. It fills the entire memory of the 64. It was a bit scary to make this part actually, because Razorback had finished the graphics for it, and I hadn't actually finished the coding. And when I started to put the graphics in, I'm like, oh god, there's no memory.
There's no memory for the code.
6 weeks on this, and I'm not going to be able to do it. So I had to make it work. Which is why on this screen there's no other effects. I wanted to do something like the end scroller on top of this. There just wasn't any memory left.
Well, it looks great, and I always appreciate the time put in.
Raistlin, tell me a little bit about C64 in the UK. You were telling me earlier before we started that it was quite rare.
No, I mean there was a lot of Commodore 64 sold in the UK. It was neck and neck with the Spectrum for a long time, and then sort of overtook towards the end.
There isn't much demo scene from C64 in the UK, and we still see a lot of Spectrum sceners active.
Yeah, there's hardly any in the UK now. I mean, back in the day, there was a lot of crackers, some demo sceners, but most of the ones that I know, they seem to have gone into the games industry or something like that, so they're just too busy. I think they all watch the scene and, you know, they wonder. But yeah, it's I think it's moved on so much since everybody was there. So.
So the demo that we're watching now actually won Goop Data.
Yep.
So you
Yes.
guys got second place with Delirious 11, and this one, Soft Machine, won first place. Soft Machine by Triad. I respect Triad a lot. They did a lot of experimental demos on the C64. Like I remember that one with alien language and stuff like that. I find that like a breath of fresh air because I'm from the PC scene, so I don't really like the scroller stuff so much. I don't have that nostalgia about it, so I like it when it's experimental, like different. And Triad guys really pulled that off a lot. So how long do you guys know the Triad guys? Was it nice getting beaten by them?
The thing is that this is a tribute to the legendary Mr. Z, we say it in Sweden, Mr. Z, one of the most legendary crackers ever, and the founder of Triad. He was actually at the party, and the whole demo is a tribute to him.
I see.
So I usually tease Triad that, oh, this is just they voted because he was there, but it's a great demo. So, but I know them since they're all local in southern Sweden, around here. I meet them a lot. Some of them live in my town here. We're good friends with Triad. Actually, when we both turned 30, Genesis Project and Triad the same year, we had a celebration at Gubbdata in this very building where I'm sitting. We had a big cake with Genesis Project and Triad on, and me and the organizer Taper from Triad, we had to take a bite out of at the same time, just like we were getting married or something. That's pretty funny.
Well, 30 years of activity of a group, it's a very long time.
And the prefix "gubb" in Gubbdata in Swedish, it means old man, old grumpy man, like geezer or geezer, whatever you say in American.
So it really fits.
Yeah, data for old grumpy man, and yeah.
I mean,
sorry.
Go on.
Actually, we made a manifesto, the Gubbdata manifesto, me and a friend from Onslaught, another C64 group, with 20 different manifest points to follow the right path of old age and old computers.
First, you need to be born very long time ago.
Online. Sorry?
First, you need to be born very long time ago.
Not necessarily.
So, do you remember some of those lines?
Yeah, I think so. I have it here.
You're looking it up on the internet, aren't you?
Yeah, we have it online.
It's right there.
I had it on my wall before. Embrace the fountain of old age and stuff like that. I can't remember.
The fountain of old age?
Yeah, instead of the fountain of youth. I can't access the page now, but it's pretty funny. Just Google for Gubbdata Manifesto and you'll find it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, this was from Gubbdata 2018, and now we're gonna move on to demos taken from this X Party. We covered X Party on last episode, but we didn't cover all the demos, and I think it was Raistlin that sent me a message on Facebook saying, "Oh, you didn't cover our demo, and you didn't cover the demo from Bonsai." And I'm like, okay, let's do another show about it. Do you guys want to join? Because I usually have problems finding C64 people to join the show. So it was awesome that you guys accepted. So we have actual C64 sceners talking about C64 stuff, which you have a lot more insight on the demos than we do. So let's get started with Rewind by Tempest. It starts with the end, obviously.
Yep.
Because it's going the other way around. That makes sense. So when you're at X Party, do you actually remember every single demo, or is it all just a blur? I mean, after 30 demos, it's pretty hardcore. And it's the 64 demos, which are like, all of them are each like 8 minutes at least.
Oh.
Oh, this one is only 2 minutes and a half.
I usually organize a small party, local party here at the place, where we have Y instead of X. Y comes after X, and we see through all demos once more, and just try to remember what we saw with the locals. But it's hard to remember everyone. I was impressed by this one because Tempest, they came back last year or something to the scene, and this is actually a one-filer, if I'm not remembered. Yeah, it is Raistlin, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
It's a one-filer, which is impressive.
Did this one win, or?
Sorry?
I can't remember if this was the winner.
Oh, the one-filer. Oh, maybe it was.
I'll check
And
for it real quick.
one-filer means that you only load it once, everything in memory, and the whole demo is in the memory. Once loaded. There we go.
No, 8th place at X 2018.
Oh, that's overall.
Ah, yeah, okay.
They gave some prizes to one-filers too, I think.
Let's check the results. Should be listed there. Number 8, Tempest, was the highest scoring one-file demo of the compo and won the one-file demo award, so yeah. Looks pretty good. I like the graphics as well.
It's impressive how much they've fit into the file, really. A bitmap on the s04e is 10K. So
this is a 10K pretty much.
Sorry?
So this is a 10K pretty much.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very nice that they fit all that in there.
Right.
But what it's worth, I love the fact that there's a certain class of art you just can't code your way out of. You know, just making the actual drawings. And that hasn't gone away. That people haven't felt a need to get rid of that, because that's the best part of this for me, is watching this kind of output.
This is Fossil by Old Men in Used Cars, or the other way around. Old Men in Used Cars by Fossil.
Yeah. Exactly.
That doesn't look like an old man at all. That looks like a cube and pyramids.
Oh, this is great, guys. Linus is a legendary musician, and Archmage is just amazing with his pixel work.
I remember a couple of years ago it was very big that Archmage was active on the C64 as well, because he made a comeback for the PC scene, but having him doing stuff for the C64 was really... people approved.
Yeah.
And the music is pretty chill out as well.
Yeah.
What comes first there? The graphics syncopating, or the music trying to keep up with what the graphics is doing?
I think for most demos it would be that the coders do the graphics. You know, you run the graphics and then the music is...
So handed the music and then they made the graphics match it?
No, I would say that they do the graphics first and then try to make the music close, and then just adjust a little bit to make it time perfectly to the music. That's what we do anyway.
I guess it depends from group to group.
Yeah. I was wondering there in that particular case, because that was an unusual level of syncopation going on there.
Well, there's a lot of factors with the s04e, because you have this sort of load time from disk, decompression, and then setting up your functions, setting up your data. So usually it's the coders that will drive the timing of the music first.
For what it's worth, this is what I call a paragraph effect. This is an effect that needs a paragraph of text to help people who aren't blown away by it understand why it's particularly so good.
Yeah.
Somebody who doesn't know what's going on just says, "Oh, that's nice," but they don't understand the magic trick going on in the background.
Yep.
People actually didn't understand what turn back meant during the compo, if it was a poetic statement or something. So
Or
they
the
held
disc.
this part forever at the compo at X.
For me, it seemed obvious that it was to flip the disc.
Yeah, of course, but it stayed on forever at the party. Nobody dared to, destroy the show. There we go. Nice.
Thanks for the follow, Shot Matrix. Welcome to the stream. Hope you enjoy it. This looks so smooth. And Moop as well. Oh, but Moop, you were already here from the beginning. Moop was saying that he has like a whole BBSs still set up, has a FidoNet node and a whole range of BBSs. Are they for C64, do you know, or for Amiga, or for all platforms?
You should see his basement. He lives 1 hour from here. And his basement, he's planning a Amiga BBS, Atari BBS. He has one C64 BBS set up as well.
So all of them.
Yeah, PC, everything.
Very cool.
He's devoted, to say the least.
Good job, Moop. Carry it on. I missed the BBSs altogether, and I've got Jason Scott knows a little bit about BBSs. He made like a documentary about the BBS scene, so he should know.
During those 4 years, I picked up a few facts here and there.
We should do a show about BBSs. Yeah, totally.
Yes.
I'm forced to agree. That would be an awesome show.
Moop.
Yeah, we would have a lot to talk about. And Jason, you would have to be here for that show as well.
I might have to be. We'll see how this one goes.
I mean, when I joined the demo scene, I was past BBSs. I was already on the internet age, so I never actually experienced BBS. Well, I experienced it through Telnet joining, but it was like pretty much dead already. So I don't have all the nostalgia that you guys that were part of that, dialing have with that. I mean, I can understand the concepts, and when I watched your documentary, Jason, I connected with all those concepts and why it felt so important for people, why it's so interesting, but I never shared it firsthand. So for me, it's always very interesting to hear people talk about BBS and AM radio and those days when they used old technologies to get in touch and pre-internet.
A lot of this just comes down to, by 2000, I was concerned that there was going to be nobody to interview. We'll always have the artifacts. Mm-hmm. Like, people will be able to pull up a digital file from 69 or 81 and be able to go, oh, here it is. But we won't have any extended interviews with the people who were behind these artifacts. Yeah. So that's why I stepped in, was just, wow. And already, so when I started filming in 2002, by the time I was done in 2005, 2 people had died. And in the interim time, another 15 have died. So for me, it's like, if I didn't get those stories...
Yeah, if you try to make them now, it would be completely different.
It would be completely different, and you'd have to have different people. And they would also be we got to the point now that some of them are old enough where they've gone from having perspective to literally not remembering any of it. So yeah. That was it. That was the only reason I did it. And that was what kind of drove me with different documentaries I've done, where I'm like, if we don't talk to the people, we're always going to have this demo, but we're never going to have the reasoning behind it if we don't talk to people. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do. I mean, granted, most of these things stand on their own. Like, you could watch this and suffer for not knowing, the 90% of the backstory. Like, it'll stand on its own creation, but they won't understand how much work is being done on it. Or conversely, somebody will discover it and they'll act very I can't believe nobody knows this. And it's like, well, no, everyone knew, they're just all gone. Yeah. They didn't tell you.
It became a detail in history and not not something. I mean, after you know the story, it just becomes, you know, it's a curiosity. You don't go about preaching it to all the 7 choirs that everyone needs to know about this because, you know, everything is actually important on its own somehow.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like, there are some things that sell themselves, like their nature, like a lot of games, right? Video games. And demos have graphics and sound that provide entertainment, so you can enjoy them. And people might be like, this is great, when was it made? And they'll be like, oh, it was made 4 months ago. And they'll be like, what do you mean? Why? Why were they made it 4 months ago using this old machine? And that maybe will lead them in. And you limit, you get a filter there, right? Each layer is a filter of what kind of person are you? Do you just want to watch a few funny pieces of graphics? Well, then you're done. Go away. Are you wondering how it was done? Okay, now you're a smaller group. Are you think you could take a shot at it? Great. And then the final level seems to be, are you willing to take a waterfall of abuse every step that you take? Well, then you're perfect. You're great for the demo scene. Come on in. Go on in. And that's how it works, right? And I don't think that's, you know, I think that's fine. You will eventually choke out your source of new blood if you're too resentful or too mean to newcomers.
I know that's a big problem in the demo scene right now. I noticed you have facet graphics on this demo. I remember facet from the PC back in the 90s. So it's great that it's still active.
I was actually in the same group as Facet on the Amiga for a short time. So we were both in Anarchy. And when we started making this demo, I mean, he'd just done a demo with Lemon. That one.
What was it called? It was Lemon and Deadliners, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I started talking to him, and he was interested in trying some stuff on the 64. So we did this. He picked it up really quick and did an amazing job. He's very fast at artwork.
Yeah. Where did you get the idea to make a demo about treasure islands? Was it because of Monkey Island or just random love for pirates?
I can't remember if I think we started with the water effect that you saw there, the sort of wave effect. We just built the demo around that.
Yeah. It was really fun to do it because it grew organically together during the process. So I had me and Raistlin, we had the ideas that we formed together and put everything together after seeing what we were able to do and what graphics we got, and I was kind of directing it in the right way. So and this demo made the whole group come together like never before, through Slack and through this pretty huge goal we had. We always made smaller demos before, and Delirious that we saw previously here was the first big demo in many years, and then this one was the biggest yet. It was really fun to make it.
Was it like the drive that you're doing it for X that pushed things, or just the group seemed more active, or?
Yeah, I think it started off quite slow, but I think when we got close to X and we realised we could actually do a demo, there would be multiple discs and, you know, could compete, I think we all just dived in and got it done. On that last part, so we kind of we called out Bonsai because we want them to try and beat our record on the scroller there. So good luck to them. I mean, we hope to see something soon. I know they're watching this now as well. So.
Yeah, they were complaining that on Delirious 11 you weren't greeting Bonsai.
But we did.
We did.
Isn't it? It's just Trap. He needs to get some new glasses, I think.
Yep.
Okay, so Trap didn't notice. He's smiling with his tongue out now, so yeah, he's trolling.
he's having a fight with Centaur now because they really did forget to call out Bonsai in their Star Wars demo.
Insert disc 3.
Hey, that's me. Yay. I became a mascot.
You became a pirate. Raise your grog to everyone at X. Yar.
And this is a pimped up version of the same idea we had in in Delirious.
Yeah, the diagonal scroll. You still
Much
didn't
larger.
have memory to put. Oh, now you have scrolling thingies. So
Yeah.
you found the extra memory.
Well, this one you can hardly tell, but it's actually running at 25 frames a second, which means I can load the graphics off of disk while it's playing. So this one, the bitmap is actually 6 screens high. So diagonal, that's, you know, I don't know, 10 times the memory of one. So yeah.
It's really long scroller.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not a loop like the previous one.
Yeah.
That Kraken scene. The spinny thing. So what was your work project? Do you guys work different scenes and then put them together? Or what's your process? Like you assign different people, do different effects, and then try to put everything together with the loader?
Actually, for this demo, there's only really one demo part that wasn't mine, so it was just a matter of linking that one demo part in.
Okay.
On the next demos that we do, it's much more of a collaboration with the coders. We've got a lot more parts spinning on the demos that we're working on now.
How do you swap files back and forth? Do you use new technologies, or is it just send a file and copy
We
stuff
send
around?
floppies to each other.
No, I mean we use GitHub, we use Dropbox for some stuff, a lot of stuff over Slack. Yeah, I actually filled up the Slack because I was sending too many video files. We found out last week that we had to delete a load of stuff, and 99% of it was my videos. So.
Okay, we have a technical question on the chat. How is diagonal scroll different than vertical?
It's just a lot more data to shift around. So the scroll itself is the same, but you're bringing in more data on the edge of the screen. And it uses a lot more memory, just because you need the edges. There's some pixels that you'll see on the screen. If they're on the very edge of the bitmap, they'll only be on the screen for 2 or 3 frames.
Yeah.
And then they're gone.
Yeah, and you still have to keep them in memory.
Yeah.
And this demo that we're watching now is Unboxed by Bonsai.
The controversial second place at X. So Star Wars demo won the competition. A lot of people think this demo should have won. Personally, I put them neck and neck. Code-wise, I think both demos are really, really good. It's very hard to call which should have won. And I think the votes were really, really close on these as well.
Yeah.
Let me take a look real quick.
Yeah, it's about 34, so about 2%.
It's a box. Getting unboxed.
Frames and not coded graphics. Zooming.
What was that?
Oh, just the box zoomed out, and I was just wondering if that was a lot to process for me here. This is just the kind of stuff I like.
Yeah.
I like themes.
Yeah.
I think because it really forces a team to really think about what are we putting forward, what kind of effects are we going to do? Because if you have randomized effects, unless you're specifically trying to prove something, having everybody work within a framework really makes for a really nice, enjoyable demo.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
I was checking that effect there of things falling down that looked somewhat animated. That reminded me of a CPC demo that really tried to break those limits back in Revision 3 years ago or something like that, or 2 years ago. That is, yeah, it's pre-rendered of some sort, but it's like the animation is different between the two overlays, so you have to do some additional math there. But yeah, I never had seen those effects being used on the C64, so it's nice to see them trying to get used here as well. And I think you can still do them better. I'll set the challenge right here. I think you can do them better. I think you can do more stuff happening on screen than just 2 layers.
So this effect here is pretty complicated for the 64. This is a DYPP, so each X pixel of the scroller is at a different Y position. A lot of those were done back in the day, but that's the first one that's used in the side borders, and it's very smooth, very nice. It'll be good to see if another team can beat that, I think.
The rolling boxes. Trap is saying, let me just say this. Trap is saying that the rolling boxes, all of them are unique, no reuse across the screen. So, okay, that's a point for you. There's still animation though, but I guess, well, most things on C64 are pre-rendered somehow.
Yeah, the thing I thought, the zoom, that was pre-rendered.
So this scroller, I mean, this was one of my favorites at the show. Because it's just, I mean, the graphics on this are just so crisp for this at the It's clearly a bitmap scroller, and they've got sprite overlays to give the extra resolution. Yeah, very nice.
I mean, if you're not a Commodore 64, you look at the screens and like, yeah, just a scroller. Casa Camelot.
Yep. Camelot being another group, of course. Which, yeah.
And they're pissing on them.
Danes love each other.
Oh my god.
I hope both Bonsai and Camelot shows up at Gubbdata next summer. It'll be interesting to see what this demo part can do to them at the same place.
I heard they were scared though. They might not dare to release that.
Elastic Insanity. Tickles our joysticks.
They actually tried this demo, tested it on my C64 at X before the compo, just to see if it worked properly. And I had so much problem not watching, and I didn't want to see anything to ruin the show. So I just let them take over the whole setup, and I walked away because I didn't want to see it to ruin the show.
Oh, this is nice. Nice
one.
Dot use to do a disc. A Rubik's Cube. Just because you haven't got it all figured out. Okay. Oh, it's color. Oh. Camelot
rules. Yay.
Doesn't
They
mean
actually
you never
do.
will. Someday, you may even look back. Oh, it's solved. And wonder why you were ever worried. Okay, some scene poetry going right there. And the Rubik Cube is smiling.
Yeah, it's putting a hat on a hat, but I'll take it. I think just having a Rubik's Cube and let you just try to think of what the Rubik's Cube is feeling will be more than sufficient. Don't need to smile.
I mean, he's finally complete. He has to be happy. How can he be sad if it's solved?
You read into it like, oh, he's a different cube now.
This one again, it's a very nice package for the 64. A lot of these things are really easy to do on the Amiga, but the 64 it's very nice package.
And it goes over the border, so is this like sprites? But you can't have it these enough sprites, can you? So, trickery?
It's just 8 sprites, so they're just changing the X coordinate on each sprite, and then they're multiplexing down the screen.
Ah, okay.
But still, you don't
So
have enough
witchcraft,
cycles, really,
not trickery, just witchcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah, Snap9 is saying on the chat, wiggling not just the text positions, but the letters as well. Okay. The power of fake depth.
And here they're calling out Boo's design, I think, which is very daring of them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in the industry think that Boo's are the #1. We'll see what they come back with.
Commercial break.
Yeah.
Revive your sex life with bonsai, bedroom accessories, and other hot merchandise like t-shirts.
Very Danish.
I thought the Danish slogan was pants off.
Yeah, that too.
Once stabbed Sharon Tell with a knife? Oh my god. Has a fetish for the smell of old synthesizers, don't we all? I'll say 33 pizza slices at an all-you-can-eat buffet. 33? Holy crap.
Impressive.
Man, how many pizzas are that? That's like a pizza has 8 to 33? That's like at least 4 pizzas. That's a lot of pizza.
They can eat a lot in Denmark. They are the hobbits of Scandinavia.
Hey Lila, welcome to the stream. Retro is pointless. Get an actual job and make a living. You will end up a lame scener. Contribute to society. Don't waste your life. You're worthless. Encouraging words for a demo scener.
Life guidance always comes from the strangest location.
Oh, retro is pointless without passion. Get an actual job doing what you love and make a living by being yourself. You will end up happy and free, not a lame scener. Love your 664 and contribute to society by making demos. Don't waste your life letting lamers tell you you're worthless. Love your life. I did like how they managed to flip it.
Boom! Pulled in, reeled in, fish on the pier.
time for side 3. It's a 70 minutes long demo. Only C64 makes it possible.
Yep.
I like this effect, but I think I've seen it before. On other demos before.
And it's not a box.
Yeah, it looks a lot like a ball, not a box.
Yeah. Oh, there's the boxes. Thank you.
Technically speaking, those are cubes. Or you mean the orange ones? I guess the orange or the reddish. There's a bonsai coming out of a box. Obviously. Moop is asking the difference between a cube and a box. I think a box is empty inside. Like my soul.
But this one is full of demo.
A cube is never meant to be opened, and a box is able to be opened.
You can't make Glenn's boxes, but you can make Glenn's cubes. And people in the chat are saying that you should ask a cat. Cats know the difference between boxes and cubes. Oh, nice scroller.
I guess this one is based off of Pandemoniac, Beyond Rust Owen's demo part.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's better. This one's a scroller, so it's obviously real time, where Beyond's is pre-calculated. Mm-hmm. But Beyond's hits every line of the screen as well, so he has, 280 pixel resolution. This one's 140.
Yeah, but those scan lines give it some more character as well, so it looks pretty decent. This is not a box, this is a Rubik's Cube. I guess inside is a box with some thingy on it. Moop is gonna put his daughter to bed. Okay, Moop, see you later.
See you later, Moop.
I guess we can skip the credits, otherwise this takes a while. But this was a very good demo. I can see why it got a controversial call for possibly being the best demo of the party. But I mean, Star Wars is a lot more popular, so I guess they got the popular vote there.
I think they are the highest votes. Got the highest votes on CSDB at least.
Okay.
It's an interesting turn on events of the last X as well, because the last X was won by Bonsai, and I think on CSDB a lot of people said that Sensors should have won, so that was turned around this time.
So it's on for next X. Let's see how it works out.
But God help us if Boo's are back and Oxyron as well.
Yep.
Okay,
I mean,
so
for Genesis, we were lucky this year because they missed it.
They missed what? I'm sorry, I missed what you were saying.
Well, there was no Boo's demo or Oxyron. Those guys usually do really nice stuff. So I think we'd all have dropped a few places if they were there.
And Fairlight too, I think.
Yeah.
Did they do some stuff for the other groups present there? I have a vague recollection of that.
Yeah. I think they were much smaller demos. There was there was the Drinking Buddies demo. That was some of the Booze guys. Yeah.
Okay, next up we have something totally different. So this got sent to me on Twitter, and they told me that I have to play this because it's my job as the Mystery Demoscene Theater 9000 host that have to play things that are current in the demo scene. So this trailer came out. It's a trailer for how to be a demo scene king.
Oh my god. Okay, seems hard.
the internet, baby.
Control freak.
So yeah, I don't know. What what do you guys
Okay.
think? Is
That's
this
a good
demo scene?
teaser, obviously.
Is this how you become a demo scene king?
They seem too young.
I don't know what to think of the thing. I think it's interesting that people are making like feature films that reference the demo scene somehow. I'm curious at the end result, but I have no idea what to feel about this trailer. I think it's funny, at least.
Well, first of all, it's a short. It's not a feature film.
Yeah.
So that's fine. The guy who did this has done a whole bunch of little tiny films. So I think people are clicking onto the phrase demo scene, but I don't know where it's. I mean, I see that there's characters in it, according to the IMDb, who are named the Muse of Music, the Muse of Design, the Muse of Code.
Yeah.
So there's some sort of. I mean, it's weird to me that he's created this amount of promotional art around it. But
I'm curious if he actually knows, if he actually visited a demo party. I think he's Australian based, so I wonder if he actually been to Syntax or any other party that happened in Australia, or actually been a part of the demo scene somehow and just thought, okay, I'm doing films now, I can make a film about the demo scene, because why not?
right.
And, I think it might be fun. I mean, that might be interesting. People might find it funny. For us who are demo sceners, this is a bit, what the fuck?
Oh, of course. So it's by a company called Blue Sanyu Films, BLUESANYU Films.com, and they have kind of all the other stuff they've made. And you look at some of the other titles, and their names like Clickbait, Slice of Life, From YouTube with Love. So, I mean, you know, okay. And anybody who's making a bunch of shorts at this point, he's probably in his late 20s, early 30s. So his relationship to it. And by the way, he does professional headshots, $99. So could be either. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't get riled up when people just kind of use weird terms, right? Like, they'll just like obviously click on to some words they heard, and it'll be like, well, you know, the people who like that, they have a lot of opinions. But yeah.
Anyways, we're gonna watch a couple of demos from Cookie. Actually, one demo and one 4K. Cookie demo party was in Paris, France, and it didn't get that many entries, but it proves that the French scene is alive, so I just wanted to include them real quick. And after that, we will talk a bit more with Jason Scott, which we haven't talked that much with so far. But for right now, I would like to ask our guests, do you guys follow the PC demo scene at all? Or are you like complete foreigners to all this? Raistlin, do you want to go first?
I watch some of it just because I know through my regular job, I know some of the sceners there. The CNTV guys. Yeah.
What do you do, by the way, for people who don't know you?
Sure. So I'm in the games industry. I've been in the games industry since 1994. Worked on Destruction Derby, the Test Drive series, and then recently worked with Epic Games. And I run my own company.
I really like Destruction Derby, so thank you for that.
Oh,
I played it a lot back in
the
the 90s. I played it a lot.
Yeah.
So what do you do nowadays? You do games for Epic, was that you said, or you have your own independent
yeah, so
company?
We have our own company, and we work as outsourcers mostly to game developers that work with Unreal Engine, which is Epic's engine.
Ah, okay.
We've done the same thing for over 10 years now. I actually sold my last business to Epic Games So that's what became Epic Games UK.
Okay.
And then after that, I stayed there for a year and then left and do the same again.
Cool. A lot of Demoscene people are in the video game industry, so and especially in the United Kingdom, there's such a big video game industry happening there, so it's...
Yeah.
What about you, Hedning? Do you follow the PC scene at all?
Not much. If stuff pops up in the flow on Facebook, I look at it, and if there is a revision or something like that, I see the top stuff maybe. For me, it's the PC scene. When I was in it was 95, 90, 94, 95, 96, something like that. And today I can't see the difference between
you can see the evolution,
modern production, and then the music video or stuff like that. I see the artistic stuff of it, of course, but I like the limitations of old computers. So I'm stuck there with the limitations. Maybe a limitation up here too, because I can't understand what they are doing actually on the PC these days. It's very amazing. When I was amazed about what they can do with 4K, stuff like what Hardy do and stuff like that.
It's becoming very famous, a category, 4K. In the past, I don't know, 3 years, it really got a huge boom. And people like Hardy, LJ, Nobi, Fizzer, they've really been pushing the limits of what you can do on 4K. And also in terms of sound, Virgil was in the chat earlier today, and he's been doing some great work with Forklang. So it's a very interesting category. This is actually 4K that we're watching right now.
Okay.
It's called Mist by Oh No. Oh No.
Mm. And I think
it's the typical
like the 4K
shader
stuff because it's
It's a typical shader stuff. But go on, what were you about to say?
Yeah, I think I'm into 4K and stuff like that just because of the limitations. It reminds me of the old computers, and I need to have some sort of limit to see what they're doing actually.
I can respect that.
Yeah.
It has multiple scenes even. Sounds pretty decent. This is made by LSD Dive, Flopine, and Trias. Trias did the music.
Can't beat the frame rate.
Really nice.
I like that the colors are not like that heavy. They're like smooth. Usually you don't see this kind of palette. So yeah, as I was saying, Cookie didn't have that many entries, but he did have a couple of good ones. This one won the PC 4K. Was missed by Ono, and the PC Demo Compo had 5 entries. The entry we just won was Evolution 999 by X-Men. It was a bit funny joke demo, but party production probably. X-Men usually do a lot of that. They're very active on the French PC scene. That's pretty much all I have to show from Cookie Demo Party. We have more demos to show to you though. We are about to enter the realm of the Apple II. And the reason that I picked a few Apple II demos was that Jason Scott was started heavy in the Apple II, or is somehow related to Apple II. I remember you spoke at Kansas Fest at some point, which is this
Kansas Fest,
which is this very long-running conference.
Years ago, yeah. And I have been going basically to every show ever since, simply because I was so charmed by it. You know, you would think that the Apple II, a computer that wasn't really manufactured after 1993, would have like nostalgic work done for it. Like people would make like little toys and tricks and kind of leave it at that. But the intensity at which people of this event put together every year, and this long-running event called Kansas Fest, named because it's from Kansas City, And there was a company out there that had a yearly show to show off new products. And then they closed the company. And people said, we're going next year anyway. And that was in like 92 or 93. So here we are, 2019, and people are still coming to this thing. And it's now up to like 100 people who show up. New products are introduced, new demos and new works are created. There's been long-standing projects that are getting updates every year.
Are there other platforms, or is it just Apple II stuff?
So it's Apple II. People have shown things from other computers. There was a really funny... So there's a couple people who are involved in it who are Atari folks, and there's like kind of running jokes. So there was one part when they dressed up, like last year, during the big Saturday night show all your stuff, these two guys dressed up with ties and white shirts and were handing out Atari religious literature. Like they were missionaries, and they were wandering among people saying like, have you considered other options? And putting up like jokey religious, think of the Church of Atari. We've got things to provide you. We've got colors and sounds that you guys have only dreamed of. It's really funny. Like it was a really funny prank. And so like there was one guy whose name I'm forgetting at the moment. He did a Radio Shack color computer game. And his Radio Shack color computer game was
what's a Radio Shack color computer?
So like Radio Shack, which is an electronics company.
I know what a Radio Shack is. I don't know what the color computer of Radio Shack is.
Sure. So you know the TRS-80, the old black and white one. They created later models that had color ability, and they called them color computers. And there was the color computer or Cocos.
Okay.
The Coco 1,
okay.
Coco 2, Coco 3. And so this guy had taken a Coco game, he had coded it in assembly and learned Apple II assembly and did code in it. And you see here they're making a reference. So this demo, which you mentioned, was covered last show. The reason I wanted to mention it was because cycle counting, which is a foundation of many demos over the years to get around a whole bunch of different situations, only recently came to the Apple II. The people sat down and said, why don't we take this knowledge that's being learned in all these other realms and apply it to the Apple II? And this is so as a result, like this kind of just missed everything else in the Apple II until recently. So it's interesting to watch these folks putting together. Again, these are tried and true techniques elsewhere. And the Demoscene realm in the Apple II is very small, like maybe only a half dozen folks doing any work in it at all.
I mean, I think the Apple II was never very famous here in Europe, and as we know, the Demoscene is a lot more active, or was a lot more active, and remained active, let's call it that, in Europe a lot more than it did on the States.
Sure.
So maybe I think it's because of that, that the Apple II Demoscene isn't really picked up that much.
Well, it's pure economics. I mean, in the time of the Apple II and the Commodore 64 being out, a Commodore 64 with all of its peripherals, you're talking about in American dollars between $300 and $500, and for a Apple II, you're talking between $1,400 and $3,000. So like, there's just an instant difference, right? If you have two phones and one costs 5 times as much as the other, one of them is going to get a lot more traction, and there's going to be a lot more effort focused on it, while the other group is just happy to have this really expensive machine, what they were handed. And I mean, one of the reasons piracy is so hugely rampant on the Apple II is just that huge price jump that people would spend $1,000+ They weren't going to spend $50 to $60 on anything but like a handful. So like, there's a real economic difference in there. And in America, you would buy the Apple at like Computer Land, like computer dedicated stores, but the department stores had Commodores and Ataris. So the family that was going to buy other things from a department store, the kids would wander back to the computer section. So it was a bet, and they would convince the parents, do this. This is the
Yeah.
thing to do. You're less likely to bring your little snotty-nosed brat into this place like a computer land that is unbelievably expensive in every single case. And it's almost like buying a car. And so at that point, the kids kids find out when it comes home. So the Apple II has lots
during
of
the
cool
process
things
of
about
buying
it. But you look at these, you look at this work. It was just a very expensive machine, and so I totally put it to economics. And so the sales numbers are completely different. So many Commodores, and so there's a lot of incentive to like repurpose them, use them for other bits. They're built like brick shithouses, so they don't fall apart very hard. Like they'll last for years and years. They can be literally passed through generations, like a legacy.
There are some videos of the
things.
Commodores that were like found rotting in the backyard, and people will just pick them up and replace some things, clean them up with some deoxy, and they still work. I mean, with the ants running around them and stuff, they were made to last.
Yeah, there's just a real different feel to both of them, and so for me, it's purely, those social aspects and economics that really contribute to the difference. Now, of course, the people who have the Apples, they're getting parts from schools that have dumped them, and different people have traded different bits, and so every year we kind of like have a big pile of Apple parts that people pick from to keep their Apples going. I have a few Apples myself, although now I'm cutting away because now I've gotten this device called an applesauce that lets you do really intense readings of Apple discs, and I'm actually digitizing a whole range of floppies here for the past week.
Yeah, you've been doing for archive.org like a lot of digitizing of Apple II discs, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a, with the archive, the Internet Archive, where I work as software curator, I'm trying to bring in as much software as possible, like both everything for every platform, no limits, and then, of course, having emulation in the browser, which is never perfect, but turns a lot of software from, I wonder what this is, to now I know what it is and I can make a decision. And that's, it's a major difference. I mean, if you look at a pile of, software disks, I'm able to write code that goes in, plays the emulator, takes a bunch of pictures, and you can look at it and go, oh, that's actually something I want to look at further. Because otherwise you're dealing with pure naming. Something's called Crossfire. And you're like, I don't know what Crossfire is. And you look at it later, you're like, oh, it's telecommunications. Oh, it's a game. Oh, it's a utility. And you make decisions. And so, improving accessibility to this old software, that's been kind of my big deal these days.
Let's jump into what's happening in the videos right now. We're playing some entries from MagFest. The one we played before was Exodus by Aberration Creation. It was a 4K. This one is called Crazy. It's by Goblinish. It's for the ZX Spectrum. I believe it's a remote entry. And then we're gonna check the first place entry. And meanwhile, I would like to ask Jason to tell us a little bit about MagFest. So, MagFest isn't the typical demo party. It's more like an event for what? Video game creators?
Yeah, MagFest is the kind of party that should have died a horrifying death about 10 years ago. And what happened is that the administration of it took it from an impulsive idea to something, really foundational and special. So it takes place in a very large hotel with a very large conference room. And currently they have about 20,000 attendees. And it's MAG stands for Music and Games Festival. So they have a LAN room, they have a arcade room. They haul in like 300, 400 full-size arcade machines. They have an independent games room, a console games room. They have board games. And then for music, they have 2 or 3 multiple stages with bands performing. They have an 8-bit stage that's out in one of the hallways that people are running in 24/7. Again, it runs 24/7. It never stops.
I saw a live stream of it on Twitch there, where they were just showing, like, people would go there and play their 2, 3, 4 tracks of whatever chiptunes they wanted. So it was like a chiptune marathon with different artists.
Yeah, and so everything in there is being done, you hope for these kind of things to exist, but they're pretty rare. To have this level of like, you know, a bunch of games available for 4 straight days, 24-hour access. And over time, as they've expanded, they've tried different things. And in every case, it's an experiment, right? So like, oh, let's have a LAN room. Oh, let's have a room that shows demos. Let's have a computer museum room. Let's have a jam room. They have a jam room where they're doing, jam. Well, it's like 7 or 8 musicians are all sitting there and they're all given a piece of music and they all start kind of improvising and working on it. You just walk and there's like a bunch of chairs and you walk in, dozens and dozens of people watching people play music, you know? And so everything's big and huge. And so they were given a room for a demo party, but the demo party is just another exhibit. So they're always going to suffer for not being, they're not going to, okay, so when I co-founded a demo party, I just recognized that like it's the infrastructure that kills you. It's renting in America, insurance is a major problem. Having a bunch of money down to be able to keep a space. There's a bunch of factors that make it that like having anything other than an informal event is a major problem. And when you're trying to put it together, you know, if it's like 20 people, you can do it in your basement. You can do it in a local movie theater. But if it's 100 or 200 or 300 people, laws come into effect and it just becomes very difficult. So what we would do is look for other events that were willing to give you space off to the side. So they deal with the building, they deal with the insurance, they deal with the admission price. And you go, okay, we're going to be over here. So that's what we did with Block Party. We were associated with a conference called Nauticon. Yeah. And NVScene was, of course, part of the NVIDIA conference. Demo Splash and Pilgrimage, those are run within their own independent area. Although Demo Splash is technically a school event. So in each case, you have this kind of overarching event. And when you don't, it's very painful and they don't last for very long because all it takes is one slow year or one unexpected cost and it wipes out the event. MagFest is so huge. They're like, do we need a room full of whatever? Okay, we'll give you a room. That's just another room.
How many people go to MagFest?
20,000.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, this thing is huge. And like people are just wandering the hallways in costume and everything else. And so it can be for everything. But I'll bet that there are thousands of people who went to MagFest this year who had no idea that a demo party was held there. Like just no relation to it. It's too big for that.
Yeah. I guess you have to put like signs saying the demo party section is that way.
And to do that, and to be honest, to do that, you need, and this is where some of the Jason Scott conflict comes, you need that showman. You need that Steve Jobs showman, carnival barker, boardwalk yeller, amusement park yeller, to draw people in, to come up with reasons to pull people in.
You have a good personality for that, so I can see where you would be an asset in that department.
How do you tell a bunch of people who are between 15 and 35 that they should stop doing what they're doing, playing games, do whatever, and come to a room and watch a computer play? Like that's your thing, right? And then part of it also is there's been more of a limitation about alcohol on the conference floor, which is part of the reason they've survived, because they started to have problems with alcohol use and underage drinking and supervision. So they clamped down to ensure success. But these are not fundamental aspects of a demo party.
Yeah, you don't need them, but you know, in Europe we are used to wanting to have it because we are mostly already getting old and we don't like to have those silly limitations imposed on us. So people who try to organize events, they try to make sure that, you know, let's make this an adult event and fuck the kids if they are too young to be here. Just ban the kids.
So that's always your problem when you have any scene that's going to need renewal. Like, are you going to like just say, we did this, we're going to follow this, and then as each of us die, we'll be done with it. And there'll be a novelty aspect for a couple people who go, look, they used to do this. Isn't that neat? And
Well,
that's it.
but we have both types of events here. Some that ban alcohol, some that don't ban alcohol, and some that are more kid-friendly, and some that are not as newcomer-friendly, let's call it that. Let me just mention that what we saw right now was an invitation for the cafe party. It was actually held at Die Halt. And what we're watching right now is an entry for Chaos, the Underground Conference, I believe it's called. And it was a 64K by Barrow, which looks a lot like Windows screensavers with some hardcore music, which is pretty fucking awesome, if you ask me. So while this is playing, I would just like to go back to Jason Scott and talk a little bit about archive.org and the efforts that you've been doing to have stuff working there through emulators. You had originally the Apple II, which you were telling me earlier that was because you use MAME as the backend there, but you also have DOSBox there, right?
Right. When we started the work, we did emulation through MAME, and we did it at the time through MES. That was before MES went back to MAME. And so we were piecing it out because we wanted to see what the world would do. Like, would companies come after us? Would we be fine? We started out with consoles because it's so much easier to emulate a console, and the control scheme is so simple.
And do you do it for stuff that's already in public domain, or do you try to implement it for stuff that you still need to be careful with licensing and stuff?
I am not imbued with the right to discuss that. But I will say that we put up a bunch of things. We are very receptive when the companies come out of nowhere and say, you need to take that down because we still sell that product or because we're still redistributing it. We put up 1,100 arcade machines. A bunch of companies contacted us. By the time they were done with us, we were down to 675. But then I put up another different 1,100. So we're back up to like 1,700 again.
But people are still selling those old arcades, or was it like arcades
that
are
are
still in business?
Some of them, like Atari, still sells. Atari will happily sell you Asteroids for blank from now to the end of time.
But everyone just builds their own cabinet with MAME nowadays and put like a Raspberry Pi on it. They don't buy the original Atari cabinet.
Well, that's the debate, right? Like, what is the role of a library when it comes to old software? Like, what? Because the problem is unlike a lot of other works, computer software is both an artifact and a product and a historical piece. So if something was important to people, like a game, and that game is still able to be repackaged and sold, what role does a library or an archive have in letting you play it? Like, and so this is, believe me, this is a very long debate. You do not want to fill your thing with this. But what we do is, what I've been doing is I've been trying to consolidate as many of these archives as possible, all these collections, and ensuring that there's at least one stable place to get them all. So when that Bamiga Sector 1 collection came, I mirrored it. It's not meant to replace their mirror, but it just says, okay, if that guy gets a different priority or if they move or whatever, it's going to be on the archive. Same thing with like mirroring scene.org or mirroring Puet or mirroring all these releases, so that if something dies, you can come back to it. And there's a worrying trend where people will write out explanations of their demos on web pages, and then those web pages will die. So suddenly we lose the web page. Like, I'm sure Fairlight has gone through 9 websites at this point. Yeah. You know, and so as a result, if you don't have those archives, those web archives, you lose all of the. They think they've done the work. They think they've walked through how the stuff was done, and they're done. And then 4 years later, somebody's researching it and discovers they can't get to it. Yeah. So that's kind of like where I'm going with the software too. Like, we're discovering like, oh, here's all these old Demoscene CD-ROMs, and they're just kind of floating and they're gone, or they're very hard to get to, or there's no context. That's a great effect, by the way. Just wanted to mention.
Roll to zoomer. This is on Amiga, so
the amount of trickery being done. There's a lot of trickery going on there. I appreciate it. Anyway, so yeah, you're constantly having to worry about things disappearing, and whether or not in the time what people have an opinion of about me, what we're doing, or whatever else. everything is designed so you don't have to deal with me. Like, you can go to the software library, go ahead, download 300 gigabytes of ISOs, walk away. Don't have to deal with me. Go do it. But we want to be there as long as we can to provide that 300 gigabytes and have it. There'll always be a guy somewhere in a house who's like, I have everything. Everything's safe. And then he does two things. He eats too many fatty foods, and he doesn't tell his family the importance of the hard drive. And next thing
everything
you know,
ends up in the trash. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing I'm kind of going with. And so I'm doing this for a lot of different places. I have 5,000. A family just contacted me. They've digitized 5,000 German radio programs. And I'm like, okay, let me help you get them up there. There you go, right? Like, that'll just happen.
You never know when you're going to need 5,000 German programs on your digital hard drive.
Apparently, there's an interview with Franz Kafka. I did not expect that. But that's the thing, right? So that's where I am with it. And so for me, it's like, whenever I look at things, though, it is absolutely through the lens of history. Like, this is amazing. I need to save it. It'll be around forever. That's a different life than what's going on in the now, the little fights and the advances and the works that are going on in the demo scene on any given month of like, this is a problem. This is amazing. Admire what this guy did. Hate what this guy did. Like, I don't really fill my life with that. So for me, a place like Puet, we were discussing that, I like that there's at least some baseline for a lot of awareness of what releases are coming out on and what their context is, enough for me to dip in and not miss at least the unquestionable landmarks in the work. Where, like, the one that came out a little while ago where he ray traced the office, and so the demo was on the little screen, but it was affecting all the items in the office.
Yeah. Well, that was from a Hungarian guy, I remember.
Yeah, that was a very neat idea, and I think we'll see that idea used in other things down the line. Like, you won't even recognize that's where they took it from. Like, I like that, and I wouldn't have seen it if it wasn't for Puet. If I had seen, like, people were like, take a look at this thing, check it out. I think that's where, you know, the phrase is house organ. You know, like a dependable, not always perfect place to go.
What I fear is like that your archive.org catches a lot of things and preserves a lot of things, but a lot of them just slip through the fingers. Like, you will never have everything, you know?
Well, I can't not do things because it'll never be perfect.
Yeah, that's
certainly not. Also,
how would you preserve, like, or get a mirror of the C64 scene, like csdb.dk, the Commodore 64 scene database?
Multiple ways. First, we're archiving billions of URLs a week through the Wayback Machine. So sometimes anything that's getting linked from Twitter, any YouTube videos that are linked from Twitter, we're mirroring them. Similarly, you mirror a whole site. Another thing is that there's people out there who will build compilations of kind of like their own remixed idea of like what needs to be saved. Like, oh, here's the most important Commodore stuff. Like Bomb Jack is a really good example. And we'll just mirror all of it. Like, we'll mirror the mirrors.
Are you aware of Assembly 64?
I must be. I mean, in terms of like...
It's a bulk download thing for everything at CSDB, which is the biggest place for the C64 stuff. You download a program, it will give you everything in a bulk. You have to check it out if you don't know about it.
Oh, I see it. You know, am I looking at all your artifacts that belong to us?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. I will set off an immediate full download of it.
Yeah, do that. It's updated every week with everything new found. The C64 scene is very much into preserving old scene discs. I have done it for 10 years myself, dumping discs and go through them and upload everything to CSDB.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So like, I've never really been particularly worried about the Commodore 64 scene. Like, it's so well maintained. The fact that like the TOSEC had 164,000 items, that's good. That's a really good sign. The Commodore PET, there's like a few dozen discs, like at most.
How's Atari doing then?
Atari is doing very well. Certainly on the side of like
the ST side,
commercial stuff.
Okay, right.
But like a lot of like user groups, there's been a lot of effort to archive. Like there's an example of something that's very difficult is user group newsletters, like tiny little distributions done years and years ago. And so efforts, anytime anyone says, I have this, we are people affiliated with it. We just take them and scan them and store them like as fast as we can. Periodicals, manuals. But the thing is so one of the reasons that I work so hard to make it that the stuff is instantly accessible is for that person. A person will come in and they'll be like, oh, you totally missed blank. You missed the Romanian Atari scene. How could you? And the answer is, well, we didn't know. And so the person will go, well, you know, as a member of and a beloved part of the Romanian Atari scene, I have these 9 zip files that are like the best of the Romanian art scene. I'm like, well, then put them up. Like the archive is adding an average of, between all of our things, not just Demoscene, please, but between everything, we're adding about 17 terabytes of new data a day. So we're just like, bring it in, and people will be like, but it's a gigabyte, and I'll be like, yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, we have a lot of those. That's another question I wanted to ask for people who don't know about how archive.org operates. First, how the hell do you have so much storage, and then where do you have the funds to operate?
Sure. Well, first of all, we've got about, I mean, last I checked, we have about 40 petabytes of disk space. So we got about 40 petabytes of disk space. And part of that is just one of our focus is disk space and bandwidth. Like that's our number one concern. Everything else is kind, you know, like we make stuff available and we don't worry about metering it. We just make it up as free as possible. Then in terms of funding, we have a foundation that's the result of our founders becoming a multi-hundred millionaire years ago. And instead of buying black helicopters or becoming a VC, he said, I'm just going to dump all that money into a library. Additionally, we have a couple businesses. We have a professional archiving business that does probably 85% of the professional web archiving in the world, the market. We have a book scanning operation that will scan books for libraries and make them available. And then we apply for a whole variety of grants, foundational grants. And so between all that, the archive costs about $14 or $15 million a year to operate, and we break even. Okay. Like we're really not able to like make a lot of money. So, and again, it's like everything, right? Like the demo scene's there, but then there's old time radio, movies, websites, you know, tons and tons of books and printed material and things like that. Like it's a really powerful place to go to. And people always like, how are, you know, like, I can't believe this is here. Because a lot of times I'll stumble on something where I'll be like, I can't believe we have 4,000 menus. Why? And or oh my goodness, we have, you know, thousands of hours of old radio programs, old dramas.
Hip-hop mixtapes.
Oh yeah, the hip-hop mixtape collection. I'm very proud of that. That was just where I just said, people are producing these mixtapes every week. So we automated pulling them in. And it's an entire it's a self-regulating genre, but it only goes back a certain amount, and people will say, where's the rest? And I'll say, well, I'm waiting for the guy who's got all the cassette tapes to send me the WAV files, and we'll host them all. And in some cases, that's what I get. I get somebody who comes along. There's somebody who has thousands of rave archive posters in Seattle, and he is slowly scanning them in, and we'll host all the ones he puts up.
It's important to have all the rave posters ever created archived.
All the rave posters, the tapes, you know, so we'll just take it. Some of it is just making people aware this project exists. But the key is to make it as accessible as possible so that people just don't assume that some shadowy organization probably has it somewhere. It's to like say, no,
Everyone has it. The entire world has access to it now.
Right, that's the problem with digital. It's either everywhere or it's nowhere at all.
Yeah.
And it's very important to like stay on top of that and just stay communicating. And where's this? Where's this? Where's this? And you know, once it's up there, people can write code that kind of like leafs through it and does cross comparison and says, "Oh my goodness, you're missing the following things. Like this isn't here." Okay, and you know, I mean, people are still sending me. Like there's a whole group that does nothing but scan 1930s and 40s literary magazines, and every week I see a bunch go up, and they look cool, but they're just doing it. Just off they go, and I see it come in, and I put it up there, and so, like I said, every once in a while you see something like that Bamiga Sector 1. And here's the other thing, is that like if you look at a collection, like here's a bunch of PC floppies that somebody has sent me, right? These are just piles and piles and piles of these things. Here's a relatively obscure PC newsletter that came on a floppy. Uptime. Volume
374.
Volume 1, number 3, 1987. And I'm gonna digitize it and put it up, but like it may not have ever been up, or I'll do the work, I'll get it up, and then a little bit later somebody sends me a CD-ROM, and on it is all of Uptime. Like, it's just completely random because maybe they've got that, maybe they've got a hard drive.
How do you deal with duplicates?
MD5 hashing.
Okay.
Okay, so if I'm doing disk imaging, I do MD5 checks, so I don't keep putting up the same disk over and over again, so we don't get 400 the same disk. But if it's an archive out there, because there's these competing, it's ridiculous that it's a fight, but there's these competing groups for like collecting things.
Yeah, we do our own version, they do their own version, and there are 30 versions of the same thing.
Right. Well, my attitude is archive them all. Put them all up.
If you have the space, why not?
Yeah, so put them all up, keep them compressed, but then try to make like a canonically available collection that is, you know, like here's your ability to play this individual item. And because to me, I don't like this. The discs are dying. Okay, I mean, like they're dying, and there's no getting around that. And I would rather grab them all, even like we discovered this with the Apple II. You would think that a system as old as the Apple II that was relatively expensive, that we would have quote unquote all of it. And we are discovering how little we've missed. How little we've gotten, because for instance, nobody archived educational software. Because why would you? Like, why would you trade that with your friends?
Yeah.
And teachers would pirate the games, the educational games, because they couldn't afford with the school budget to have it. So then they made the protection on the educational games better than games themselves to protect against these teachers. Now you have teachers locked out, and there's no cracking scene for educational software. So now we're finding dozens and dozens and literally like dozens of seminal programs that represent the American computer educational experience of the 1980s. And we're finding, oh, there's no copy of this. Also, they did something called, we talk about this a lot, silent updates. Like the version, what we would normally be thought of as version 1.1 and 1.2, there's no difference in the packaging. Like they would do a run of 1,000 and then they would say, we fixed the code. Keep going. Nothing on the packaging, no notes, no nothing. Image a quote unquote already captured item like Infocom, like an Infocom Zork game. We'll discover they updated it. Like they randomly changed the software to fix some problem.
And they didn't send it to everyone? They just like the new versions are different?
They didn't do anything. They didn't tell you. It just, as they're selling more boxes, this box and this box look exactly the same. You could have a store where you have two boxes next to each other that they're different versions of the program, and you would have no way to tell. So this is the stuff we're discovering on the Apple. Now imagine it's got to be the same for the Atari, the Commodore, the Coco.
One last question that I had for you: how, if you're a developer and you see, or just a random person who likes watching demos, they go to the archive.org, they see the playing there on the emulator, but it's not playing right. So where do they go to have that fixed?
So when we started, we were emulating using MAME and MAME variants. Then we added DOSBox for DOS games because we found they tended to emulate better. We added Vice emulation recently, so that we did that. We do scripted Amiga emulator for the Amiga. And in all these cases, they're open source projects. And so what we're doing is these edge cases are revealing problems with that code. So in general, they all should have ways for you to contribute changes or improvements to the code, because we're just reflecting what the emulators have. There's no in-house emulator at the archive.
And when a new version of the emulator comes out, you will just eventually update it on archive?
Yeah, so when MAME produces it, we can within 2 or 3 days have all of our stuff updated to MAME. It's a little bit complicated because sometimes MAME will intentionally break something for a version to make the sound better, even though they know it slows it down to half speed. Because on native version, it doesn't matter if it's half speed, but on the web version, it sure does.
Yeah.
That's whatever. That's
small
not
details.
That's just logistics. I mean, it's just like logistics. It's like it's like getting a box every month, and you got to inspect the box before it goes in. So what we're hoping, though, is that by making this stuff available, by making it that people are connecting to it and are able to play these games, that a bunch of improvements that otherwise would just be, it works, it doesn't work, can go to, wait a minute, do this and it'll work a little better. And people will be inspired to contribute code because, as I'm sure you know, emulation has one of the whiniest audiences on the end user sphere you've ever seen. They're very cranky, they're annoying, and they're not understanding of the work that's being done, and it is extremely thankless work. Like you can see a guy spend 6 months trying to backtrace a piece of code, trying to understand why it expects the machine to do that, and then discover that there's a beautiful document by one of the emulator authors. He diagnosed, I think it was like 600 things the Atari 800 6502 does wrong. Like, this bit goes in like this. All the documentation says it should come out like this. It does not.
Yeah.
Comes out this way, and so his emulator deals with it. And that's thankless work. Like, normally you have to be paid for that. You would never see somebody do that because they, oh boy, I'm going to stream some movies and do that.
And then it sometimes works differently on different versions of the same machine.
Yeah, no, we definitely find cases where copy protection that worked great on the Apple II Plus doesn't work on the IIe, or will work on the IIe and never work on the others, or always assumes the mocking board is in slot 5. And you're like, what did they do back then? And the answer was they just took the tech support call.
Yeah.
That's all they did. And now we're here a billion years later, and a person's like, I'm running your emulator and it's not working.
Well,
and it's like,
tough shit.
It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, it's like, yeah, because there's nobody. What I've told people I've loved is we will get tech support calls. We seriously do. I'm not making this up. We'll get tech support calls at the archive with things like, I'm playing this Armada game, and it was all Japanese fighters as I remember it on level 3, but it looks like there aren't Japanese fighters. What do I do to set that option?
Play the right version.
In 1984, trying to answer the hint line. And they'll be like super intense about it. You know, like one of my favorite statistics is Oregon Trail, which is on the archive, gets booted up about every 10 to 20 seconds, 24/7.
It's a very famous game.
Just playing it. It's used by schools. Our version playing at the Internet Archive is used by schools because they just set up 30 web browsers and the kids all play Oregon Trail. Like it's great to be part of that ecosystem and have a difference in people's lives, but they have no idea what's happening. Like they don't know they're really playing a 40-year-old game based on a mainframe, and here was the reasoning behind it. To them, it's just, I want to cross the river. I want to get this thing. I'm gonna win, and leave it at that. And here's the worst thing: we got people who would put up role-playing games, and they would play them for 3 hours and then close the browser, and they'd go back and they'd be like, "I saved the game. Where is it?" And we added persistent file systems using cookies,
That's
so that
smart.
it works, and those complaints went away. But these people have no idea that's what's going on.
Yeah.
So to them, it's normal that they would just boot the machine up again, open up
I
the
mean,
browser.
but there are still some consoles that lose, that you have to save at a certain point. So it's not a million system, but people on the web are not used to that.
Yeah, so that exists. And so there are people who will play an RPG game for 6 or 7 months on the web, having no idea that they're playing like a PC that was created in 1998 as part of DOSBox. They have no idea. None.
I find it awesome.
It's crazy. It's crazy life. I love it.
Anyways, I think we should wrap up the show, otherwise we'll be here all night. I asked the audience if they have any last questions. Trap for Bonsai asked, is there any new demos from Genesis project coming out this year?
Yes, there is. Yeah,
Yes.
they should be worried.
Don't worry.
World domination is ensured.
Yes.
X 2020 as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Sensor design.
Maybe.
Okay, so any last things you guys want to add? You want to plug anything in particular? Raistlin? No?
Not that I can think of.
Anything you would like to add? Any URL or whatever, or party that's coming up?
Yeah, Gubbdata. My party this summer accepts remote entries like every year. It's you can. I think there's no new info on the page right now, but we will update it. It's at gubbdata.se.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Jason, is there anything you would like to plug of the stuff you've been working on? Maybe your
based on
podcast,
chat,
I guess.
I think I've talked quite enough. I think I don't want to kill people. Look, my Twitter account is text files. I'm always talking about things that are amazing out there and stuff that I'm lucky enough to be part of. The archive is at archive.org. Most people know that, but maybe they don't. The Wayback Machine continues to be what it is. I myself, like I said, what I'm doing all day and all night is just bringing digital data on and
making sure it stays on.
I have been an inherent admirer of the demo scene since my teens. So for me, I've always loved it. It is not important for me to have it love me back.
Why did you stop having a block party at Nauticon? Because Nauticon is still going on, right?
Oh, I ran out of money. Like
Okay.
it was costing me $10,000 or $15,000
Just to get the space in Nauticon for...
just for like paying for prizes and putting together pieces and paying for hotel rooms. I really wanted guests, so we brought guests in, so I was paying for their flights and their stuff. And I wanted to do it, quote unquote, right, with varying degrees of what right is. And so after about 4 years, it was just like, this is too expensive. And so we just had to call it. Nauticon went on for a few more years. They're currently dormant, but they had a demo party for a while afterwards, hosting a demo party to keep things going. But that was it. It was just the pure, like, it was a lot of energy and a lot of money. And when I switched from working as a Unix administrator making 6 figures to becoming an archivist making much less than 6 figures, I couldn't afford to spend the equivalent of buying a car every year to keep things going. And I didn't want to do cheap out, last year we had...
after you do it big, it's a bit hard to downscale.
Right, and you shouldn't. I don't think you should. I think that you just make people, people see pictures from previous years, and then they say, well, what happened now? It's just a cardboard box with the word demo written on the side and a bunch of party hats. That's not cool. so I'm glad that like Demo Splash and others have like stepped forward. Synchrony, I went to Synchrony. That was a lovely time last year. I couldn't go this year just because of the timing. I had hoped to go to
At Party?
No, Revision. Well, At Party's the other American one. They do great, but no, the it's Revision, right? The one.
Yeah, on Easter.
Yeah, I really wanted to go to Revision this year, but I ended up having to buy a ticket to another event, so I just can't make it. But my goal is to go finally to some European demo parties, take my lumps, enjoy myself. I really want to hit a few real ones. Ones that are like demo parties. Demo is the first thing, not a side.
Demo, not like assembly. That is also demo, but it also has the gamer part. Anyways, follow-up questions. Trap is asking, any prices at Gubdata? Hedning, this one is for you. Any prices?
Yes, we usually have a table with stuff people bring in to fill up, and we hand them out after the compo.
It's a donation price. People donate whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly. But this year we will also have some special stuff made out from a blacksmith.
Oh,
local blacksmith who will make some really nice trophies. So yes.
Very nice twister as well that we're watching right now. What's this playing? It was you that cued it, right?
Yeah, this is Midnight Sun, Atari STE demo.
Okay.
From 2017.
Okay. By the Swedish MFX, is it?
Yeah. Let's see here. I don't remember.
I saw it on the file name. That's why I know.
Yeah, yeah.
No Signal Input is asking, Jason, will there be any more talks at DEF CON coming?
I don't attend DEF CON anymore. I kind of stepped back from InfoSec conferences. They're going in their own direction. They don't need a historian. They just want to talk about threat models and making whatever, and it costs money to go to them. They never pay you. And so I will do other talks, but...
What about Hope? You're still going to Hope, right?
Yeah, I go to Hope because it's right there, and it's literally, a few miles from my house. Mm-hmm. So, and I like the folks, and they let me in and let me talk about history. They're very interested in it. Hope is not an InfoSec conference.
I saw your documentary on DEF CON. That was a pretty decent documentary as well. Yeah, it gave the whole overview of the event.
I thought so. Some of them didn't like it, but nobody likes... If you make anybody do a documentary about themselves, they're going to be sitting in the screening room being like, oh, no. But
it's not how I remember it. It's slightly different.
Exactly. Well, I always remember when I did the first, very rough cut just to show them where I was going with it. One of them was like, you make it seem like all we do is drink and party. And I responded, all you do is drink and party. don't act different.
That sounds like the demo scene.
Sorry. What's there. So that's also one of the reasons people will say to me, why don't you do a demo? Why don't you do a demo documentary? And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want that pain. And the demo scene, if you've been following it for 25 years, they don't want Americans making a story out of their lives.
You can make a documentary about the American demo scene.
Right. I would make a documentary about the American demo scene if I wanted to, just to bring that together about its unique aspects, and then have some reference to the European demo scene. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to do that either. That doesn't sound...
Yeah. It's not as interesting.
I'm very proud. I made 3 very long documentaries that are very comprehensive about their subjects, and those were fun. And that was how I spent 11 or 12 years of my life. And to do another one like that, I just don't have that time in my life now. Not when I'm approaching 50 years old, to spend driving in a car at night to do my 4th interview because I've been driving for 300 miles to get the full story of this particular demo. And also, I don't know anything about being in Europe. Same reason there's nothing in the BBS documentary about Europe, because I was like, I'm not going to learn how to function within a country or a set of countries and do this massive film. Know your limits. If you don't know your limits, you're just going to fill up with these promises. You're going to make a terrible thing. And so for me, if people want to see my talks from these conferences, a lot of that energy is in the podcast. Those are essentially designed to be well-made 20 to 30-minute speeches about a subject. And so I think people would get most of that enjoyment out of those. So it's called Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, and it's on all the services. That's probably the best way to
I follow your podcast. I've been enjoying it. I like the story of Romero as well, and the Android guy. I didn't know that you had the connection with him, so I found that funny. So yeah. Good work on the podcast, and I hope you keep it going.
Yeah, no,
Are you planning to close it when you finish all your debts, or you don't know yet?
I don't know yet. The key to me is to be transparent. Like, there should be no situation where I'm now incurring debt that I'm paying off on taxes earned from the podcast. So now I'm just dumping all of that in. And so that's going to continue, because that's probably going to be at least another year of that, year plus. So as a result, there's episodes coming once a week for at least the rest of the year. But I don't know if I get to a point where I go, okay, this is no longer going for it. People will make decisions. Either, yeah, he's given me this amount of money. Like, nobody should be sacrificing themselves to support anything. Like, nobody should be like, oh man, it's really hard for me to make rent, but I really feel bad for this guy, so I'm going to pay for his GoFundMe or his Patreon or whatever. Like, that's crazy. Don't do that. Like, that's not good. Now 2 people are in hell.
Yeah.
Do what you're comfortable with. I give a certain amount of money every month to projects and people I believe in. And if I think that they've handled it, or I'm not comfortable giving that amount of money, then you stop.
Yeah.
It's on you.
No need to feel guilty about it. It's just whatever you feel like doing. Yeah.
That is so difficult to, like, I think sometimes to get along to people. Like, support things that you believe in, but anything that believes that you should also be sacrificing for them is a sociopathic manipulator, is a communist. You should never do that.
There are other ways you can support them. I mean, you can retweet when they are doing stuff. You can, subscribe, like, and all that jazz. I'm talking about, I'm thinking about my show right now in particular. So I'm thinking you don't need to give money to support something. And in Demoscene, you have a lot of sceners are even actually against anything that is with anything money attached to it. You're not doing it because you love it. You're doing it because you want to get money out of it. Well, the money sometimes helps to encourage you to do stuff if it's organizing a party or if it's whatever. If you're doing it and you're paying to do it, it's a lot harder than if you can break even. So
yeah, I mean, and it was a ridiculous controversy, but NVScene dumping thousands of dollars in, that had an effect. And you could see it affected the other parties that year, because why would you contribute to this party? There's this party that'll give you maybe as much as $1,000.
Computers.
And so why not do that? And so, I totally get that. But I mean, like, that's the other danger as well. You're always going to deal with that. Like, if somebody's creating a game because they enjoy it, or they're creating a game because they're under intense pressure to make a sequel because the other one did so well, and the people who they've signed up with are like, where's the sequel? It's a whole different world. And so I totally understand the rejection of money in the demo scene. I understand it. I'm glad that I work with an organization that essentially donates bandwidth and disk space to it as is needed, video and everything else, that we don't charge people to have access to this work, that we support it, because it's on its own beauty. Like, if I pull in a person, any person, and I show them a really well-made demo, they don't need to know anything else. They don't need to know that it's part of this big, they will objectively come away amazed and happy. There's not many products in the world you can say that, like, canonically. Maybe there's some, whatever, Stroop waffle, Other than that,
Or the waffle snaps, as they call them. Anyways, let's wrap this up because it's been a long show. I'm sure you guys are already anxious to get away. So I would like to thank my guests, Raistlin, Hedning, and Jason Scott, for stepping up. Great show. Thank you so much, all three of them, for being here. Also, my supporters on Patreon: Garfield, Jeff Throboro, Paul Jump Up Kid, Tel Topo, Fulcrum, Paul Falcão, Get It, Wessendorf, Trickster, Evil, and Gasbot. Thanks so much for your support on Patreon as well. That's it for this show. Let's find someone on Twitch that is doing something cool that we can raid. Oh, Luna Sorcery seems to be doing stuff, so let's raid him/her. I never really know how he's supposed to call him, her. See, I'm doing it again. I still don't know. So yeah, that's it. We're about to raid Luna. Thank you guys for sticking up during the entire show. And see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Hold on. Just 1 more second. Right now. Okay.